Welcome to the Fly Culture Podcast, bringing you interviews, reviews, and fishing tips. Here's your host, Pete Tigers.
Welcome back, everyone, to the Fly Culture Podcast. I hope you're well. The mayflies are still knocking round. The fish aren't fully locked onto them just yet, but it's getting ever closer. My guest today is a good person and a smart rod builder based in the Netherlands. I met him at a show a few years back and we got talking, and I really liked his approach to life and fishing. I'd like to give a very warm welcome to Nico Vreugdenhil today to the podcast. Nico, it's great to catch up with you. I got to see you at the BFFI in the early part of the year, February, but are you well?
Yeah, I'm very well, thanks. And busy.
Well, that's a good thing to hear. And I was just thinking before we started recording this that you're my third guest from the Netherlands. And that's despite the fact that it may not be considered in some areas as a passionate fly fishing nation. I know this isn't strictly true, but how would you describe the fishing scene over there and where that passion actually comes from?
Yeah, I really don't know where the passion is come from, but we have a lot of water, but fly fishing water is not the best. Only in the winter you can good pike fishing and that kind of thing, bass and that kind of thing. That's it. And the rest for trout or streamy water, you have to go to Germany, but the German waters are really close by. It's 2.5 hours drive, 3 hours drive. Then you have the first good streamings, and so it's not a day drive. So you can easily go for 2 days, one day even, for fly fishing. And I think that's also one of the reasons that it's still popular here as well for the fly fishing business. We have a lot of shops, and okay, because of internet, several disappeared, but still we have some big fly fishing stores in Holland, and they are well known.
Nice. And does that mean then that you will travel, like you say, for a couple of days, or is there somewhere local that you'll go throw something for pike, or how does that work? Do most people head to places like Germany and elsewhere for a few days fishing? Because I seem to remember Jay Lee did something similar, but would you also go fish some of those canals for pike and other species?
Yeah, especially in the winter, you have around every corner you have water where pike is, so that's easy. You don't have to drive hours for it to fish pike. You're 10 minutes away from my house, I can pike fishing, or 5 minutes away. So but that's also challenging other areas. So once in a while, every year we have a bike event with my friend Itz, and some other people are coming over from the US or from England or from Sweden, like Christian, and then we are fishing a whole weekend on pike. But that's a nice part to do that as a kind of short holiday or 2 trips with some friends, good food and drinks.
That sounds absolutely perfect to
Yeah.
me. And when you head down to these German streams, can you describe them a little bit, really, for people listening? Because, you know, we all know about those streams, but many of us probably haven't fished them. And just to get a sense of what they're like and what you learn from fishing those streams.
Yeah, you have when you go here from where I live, 3 hours away. It's called the Eifel. It's a volcanic area, so the water is pretty dark. So even it's clear, yeah, it's not the crystal waters you see. So it's dark. So you have to read the water really well because you don't see the fish easy. You cannot see where is he hidden behind rocks or trees or that kind of thing. So you have to read the water carefully, and they are really pretty small, so it's always 2 3 weight rods, and but it's really fun. It's not wild trout over there, so it's all stocked, but yeah, the German love fish because in some areas it's also in an it's a kind of hunting, so the fish you catch you have to take with you. So, and that's a shame, I think, because then yes, every 6 weeks they have to stock the water, and it's not wild, and that's a pity. Yeah. And then you have to, when you go more to the Alps, to the Bavarian area, there you have beautiful crystal clear water, and delicate fishing. Wider, you need a 4 5 or a 6 weight, and but that's so much fun. Yeah, and you have to be very carefully because the water is so clear they see you from miles away, for example. So long leaders, delicate fishing, but I love that. Yeah.
That sounds perfect to me. And I know we were just talking off mic. And is it dry fly fishing for you? Then is that what you prefer to chase these fish with?
Yeah, I'm a dry fly guy. Sometimes you have to check nymph or nymphing because in the early mornings or something, nothing is coming up. But yes, I love dry fly. Yeah, it's when you see that they catch your fly, and that's every time it's an amazing thing. Yeah, and when you're doing check nymph or something, you don't see the fish, and I love to see the fish when he takes it. Yeah, and even that he's hiding and then he's coming up to your fly when you have a good presentation. Then yeah, that's kind of stuff what I like. That's my kind of fishing. Yeah.
Yeah, it sounds perfect to me. And does that mean because these crystal clear waters, you're fishing smaller flies, or is there a big variety of hatches that fish get locked onto?
Yeah, that's funny because my friend, we know each other. We're fishing each other now for almost 50 or 52 years. He said, I need to see my flies. I'm using always small flies, kind of emergers, and he's using really huge flies. And still, we don't know the difference because he's catching it, I'm catching it. But when we change our flies, it's the hell. We don't catch anything. So it's more and more, I believe, also in the fly you take, where you believe is also more important. And of course, the fly has to be good, but it's not that sometimes it's too much rocket science, I think, in my opinion. And yeah, if you see, yeah, now I'm using the flies of Nigel Nunn, you met him as well. And his flies are also totally different. And this kind of flies, I'm really fond of it. And they're catching as hell. So now most of the time I'm using that ones. And then ask him, please make smaller for me. And he did it, and they are amazing. Yeah. So it's a different pattern as other flies. So and they're catching good. Yeah.
That's good to hear. And does that mean then you don't carry a lot of patterns as a result of that? Because that confidence, I think you're dead right that the confidence thing is really important. The pattern to me is slightly secondary in the sense
Yeah.
it's how I'm fishing the fly. And what I mean by that is the presentation and the drift and everything else. Is
Yeah.
that what you're thinking? Yeah.
Yeah. Of course, you have the mayfly you cannot use, for example, in October. I know, but an average fly, it's you can sometimes the fish the whole year around. This kind of flies, and it's not hocus pocus for me. I think the presentation that's more important. Yeah, and sometimes it's my opinion, and everybody has. When you're talking with guys who's building flies, they not agree with me, but yeah, it's how I see it. Yeah, and I'm catching fish.
Yeah, I think many people do as well,
Yeah,
and I think if you got something remotely close, and I think that's probably why generic sort of patterns probably
yeah,
work pretty well as well. And where I fish, that the fish don't generally get locked onto a particular pattern, so if something looks like it's in the ball game, and the thing that can break that up for me is a terrestrial pattern anyway. So I think they will give that the time of day if that's coming down, if they're in a feeding lane and sort of not necessarily actively feeding, but if they've sort of got half an eye skywards, then perhaps a terrestrial pattern could come into play. Do you fish terrestrial patterns much?
no, 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 not much. No, I'm always the old-fashioned big the the duck feathers, etc. That kind of thing. Easy.
Nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, and if they're working for you, that's absolutely fine. Yeah, absolutely. So are these the sort of venues that first sort of got you thinking about you needed a glass rod to fish these sorts of places? Is that where did this sort of, because we're going to delve into it and your how you turned it into a business as well, but how did you come around to thinking actually a glass rod might be good for the sort of fishing that I'm doing?
Now because we're fishing on gin clear waters, and nowadays, 30, 40, 50 years ago, there were less people fly fishing, And nowadays there is a lot of pressure on the water, and the fish is so spooky. So you need very thin leaders. And at a certain moment, the rods where we were fishing with 20 years, 15 years ago, they were harder and harder and harder. And at a certain moment, when you take a nice trout 30 centimeters with a lot of power in the streaming, he takes it, and the tipping has not time because the rod is so stiff, and then it will break. And on a certain moment, I saw on the water a guy with a soft rod, and I said, "What kind of rod is it?" And he said, "Oh, it's a glass." And yeah, I said, "Okay." He said, "Catch here, cast, and try." Okay, and I did it. And I was amazed by the delicacy and the softness, and then suddenly I catch the trout as well with that rod, and then I was in love. And then the rest was history. And I thought I need a glass rod. And then I was searching for half a year on the internet and everything to read about glass rods, etc., etc. And then you see some kind of rod builders you love and you don't love, and I thought, okay. And then suddenly I found Christian from Fine Tackle, and I sent him a mail and I asked, "Can you build a rod for me?" He said, "Okay, but it can take 2 years because I'm not building that much rods, that many rods." And I said, "Okay, that's too long." Then I start for myself, and then I was practicing rapping on to start rapping. How do you learn it? And looking on the internet and etc. etc. And then I thought I'll make it for myself. So I bought components. I bought straight away a good blank from Tomo Egan because I think it's easier. It's always better to buy a good blank badly finished than a bad blank good finished, because you can rip it off later on, you can do it again, and that's and then I start to build it. And also straight a name, I'm always looking in concepts, and I don't know why. It's because of my past in the fashion business or something. It's always you think in concepts, and I thought, okay, now I need a name. Now my name is terrible to pronounce, and then my wife said, okay, maybe it's a good idea to something. What's the name of the god of the fly fishermen? And that was Yebizu. And then when I was checking on internet, there was a big famous brand in Japan of beer. That was Yebizu. 2,500 sushi stores worldwide. I thought that's not a good name. And then suddenly I found Yamame, because they had also a nickname, the Queen of the Mountain Stream. He is elegant. It's hard to catch. It's the most beautiful fish. And I thought, that's my name. Everybody can pronounce it. It's a fish. It's the most beautiful trout in the world, in my opinion. And everybody could spell that name. And that's the story behind the name. And then suddenly I had a brand, kind of, and then friends started to ask building rods, and you put it on. Or I put some pictures on Instagram or something like that. I don't know exactly when it started, and then a German man called me, an old man. He said, "I love your rod. I want to buy one from you." And then that was my first customer, and from there it started a bit. And then I put it on Fiberglass Manifesto and that kind of things, and on the FFR. And then it started, and people contact me, "Please, can you make a rod for me?" And then the next phase was suddenly that Vic Johnson contacted me if I could. He asked me, "Can I put you in my new book?" And I said, "Wow, okay, please, yeah, go ahead." And then Mark contacted me as well from Alternative Tackle if I was joining the group, and that was the next step. And then I decided, okay, I'll become a rod builder now as an amateur. But before I knew, it became 2, 3, 4 days a week, and and now it's full time. So that's the story a bit in a short.
Right. Well, let's go into that a little bit more deeply, because there's lots to cover there. The first thing is what you said about the delicacy of glass rods, and also what you were saying about fishing stiff rods, and like you said, that the ability of a softer rod. And I caught a nice fish on a bamboo rod just the other day, and we talk on here quite a bit about it, that the ability of a softer rod, as you say, about presentation, but also about how it actually plays a fish. And that's become, in the last 2, 3, 4 years for me, really important. I'm fishing somewhere where there's some slightly nicer fish. So I'm starting to think about those things a little bit more. And I actually did a podcast on the river, must have been 2 or 3 years ago, when I first got the glass rod, which we'll come on to a little bit later, from you, and the ability, and I talked about it, and it wasn't done just, I made some stuff up. I was astounded how I could, and they use that term. There are certain cliches I don't like in fly fishing. One of them is a rod that's hooped over. But this thing was hooped over, and I could keep a fish. I remember recording the piece now, that I could keep that fish out of the log jam that it was desperately trying to get into. And we shouldn't really underestimate the ability of those rods. And they're incredibly robust and very, very strong as well, aren't they?
Yeah, yeah, it's really strong, because everybody thinks because they are softer that they are not that strong, but they are stronger than ever and soft. And when you catch a fish, you can easily hold him. Even you don't have to be afraid if your tipping will break the fish. You can easily land your rod. Yeah, the feeling you have more control about the fish than with a stiff rod, what I had in the past. Then every time I was, ooh, 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 will it break? Will it not break? And that feeling with a glass rod is so much easier to control, and I think also even better for the fish, in my opinion. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And we've seen this sort of renaissance, second coming, whatever it may be, of glass rods. And you mentioned Cameron Mortenson's Fiberglass Manifesto. Was that when you were first picking up a glass rod? It seems to me as though, it was just one of those chance meetings on the river. But when you got home and you researched glass a little bit more, were you aware actually there are more people fishing these? Was that wave starting to happen, or were you just before that started to happen?
No, before I didn't. Yeah, I had a glass rod in the past, but it was heavy, it was solid, and everything. Everybody was going to graphite in that time, so I did it as well. I was following the mainstream. And then, yeah, when you start fly fishing, you don't nothing about fly fishing. So you go to the store, and they say this is a good rod, and you're buying it. And from there, you buy a second, a third, or a fourth, and you're not aware what everything is happening in the world. And then when you're fishing lately, talk with other fly fishing men, you think, hey, there are other rods. Oh, there is split cane are also nice, but never meant. I never saw a glass rod in a modern fashion. Then 10 years ago, 9 years ago, I don't know every that day, but and then I was going looking for internet, and then I found my glass manifesto, and then there was a new world for me, and I thought this is it, and never thought that that's supposed to be in that position 5 6 years later as well in that business, but I'm happy to do it, and I changed my life with it, and I have less stress and it's fun. I'm working at home and it gives me a lot of opportunities, and yeah, it's easy also for the family.
Yeah, nice.
Yeah,
Yeah, no, they're fascinating rods, and that whole process of it, and the wrapping you talked about. But for me, another interesting point, and if regular listeners will know that I've had Sandy Nelson on, and we talked about blanks, and I've still not had the nerve to do one myself, and I'd rather an expert like yourself or Sandy or many other people out there did a much better job. But I think that's a fascinating point that you make. When you first bought that glass blank, you obviously sourced it, you found the one that you thought would work really well for you, and it was a decent one. Because I've always thought as well that if I'm going to wrap a rod, I'd rather wrap one that I'm going to fish with, not one that I've bought that's going to sit in a cupboard and
no,
I'm
no.
not going to use. I probably wouldn't as my first one. And also it would probably make sure that I did a really good job because I know I'd invested a little bit more in the blank itself. Was that also part of your thought process? By the sounds of what you said previously, it probably was.
Yeah, straight away because I love good materials. I'm always I love high quality products, handmade products, and therefore I straight away I thought, okay, when I started with building the first blank for myself, it will be. I was looking via Glass Manifesto, and then I saw premium brands, and I decided, I don't know why, because the story behind it, straight away to Tomo, the Yamogi, it could be also a Steffen brother, but the Steffen brothers in that time had a delivery time for 4 months, and and he had them on stock, and I had made a list. Those four I want to have at least as a start, and then straight away it was the Yamogi, and at that time I bought my components, and after that I thought it's much more fun that I will make my own components. So then I bought a lot, and before I know, I was turning wood and I was turning metal, and then and I had also contact with Itzruk. He's a reel maker, and he is also an engineer in machinery, and he gave me some tips and tricks, and that helped me as well. And from the third or the fourth reel rod, I was making all by myself. Yeah, and I
Is that how you describe yourself as a person? In that, if you go into something, you go into it deeply, learn all of the processes, and it's interesting and intriguing for yourself to go down those wormholes and make sure that you do everything yourself. Would that be a fair description of yourself as a person? That when you do it, you go all in and you do it properly.
yeah, that's with all what I'm doing. That's with some sports I do, with other hobbies. Then I want to know every detail, and I want to do it. Yeah, go in as deep as possible. And the other opportunity, when you can make your own wood, you can make your own hardware. You are not. You can more. Creativity, because I can buy a Lemke, or I can buy. I'm selling now Bellinger reel seats. They are the most beautiful with bearings, but with other ones, you can more creativity, because you can make what you want. And it's also with the insert. I make so many different models, and also in hardware. And and if a customer said, okay, you can even make your own colors. So that's the so you're more unique. You're not a mass production, because when I put a Lemke on it, everybody can put a Lemke reel seat on it. It's not wrong, but it's not my signature. And now I can put my signature on every rod, because nowadays people see straight away, hey, that hardware, hey, that's from Yamame, and that's what I like and what I want, because it has to be a bit different. And the only every rod is almost the same. It's the length, but where is everybody looking to? It's the quality of the cork. It's the insert of the wood, and the hardware. That's the only thing what's so unique on a rod to see, not to fish, but to see.
Nice.
And
Well, I was just going to say that you'd gone down this, you'd built your first rod, and then you'd fished it, and I guess it was one of those things that your friends saw you fishing it, and that's how I guess was the birth of the business, either consciously or subconsciously. That they said, "Well, I want one," and that's the best way, I guess, to
yeah,
build a business, isn't it?
yeah, that's the only way, because when you started, nobody knows you, and you have no budget. And nowadays, luckily enough for me, you have Facebook and Instagram, because otherwise nobody should even still know me. Because when I see my customers, they're worldwide. It's from Japan, it's Australia, it's the US, Canada, also Europe, a lot of Europe. But if you don't have those marketing tools, nobody should know you. When I was 30, 40, started 30, 40 years ago, nobody should know me, or hardly. And initially, is the first orders are always the best. It's friend to friend, and later on, hey, I bought a rod from him. Look, oh, never seen that guy. Oh, that looks nice. I will check his website or his Instagram, and then it's the next step. And now it's spreading, still spreading, and that's funny. And what also for me is important when I have a customer, a lot of most of my customers are coming back for another rod or another reel or more rods and reels. So then I think I'm doing also good, deliver good quality, and that's how it spreads. Still, it's still spreading on that way. Yeah.
Nice. And does that mean that the glass community, as you see it, and you're obviously very deeply entrenched in it, and other places that we'll talk about, but does that to you then make you feel that the glass community is still continuing to grow?
I think it's in the last 2 3 years it's growing because I don't know the reason why, because it's still a niche market. I compare it with the bamboo and the split cane. It's when you compare with how many rods are sold or selling worldwide every year, and it's glass and bamboo. It's still niche, I think, but that's it. But when it is 2% of the mass is going to that kind of markets, for those markets it's big. You know what I mean? Yeah. So when it's growing, when the glass business is growing for 10%, it's from the mass production less than 1% probably, or something, or even less. But it's okay for us, for rod builders like me.
Do you think part of that is a result of possibly lockdown and where people weren't able to fish and they looked at their fishing slightly differently? And as a result of that, thought, actually, I'm going to try this. I'm going to. And what you said about social media is really interesting because it meant you can interact with the builder themselves. So you're actually talking to somebody, and I know the rod I bought from you that you kept me in touch with photographs, and I know Luke Bannister does very similar as well. And I saw him at the same show I saw
Yeah.
yourself, and I asked him, he's building me a bamboo double hander, and I said, how does it feel when you're planing it? How does that? And you're actually interacting almost, it's almost in some respects like an artist, isn't it, in that you're, when you buy a painting, let's say, you're buying it from an artist, so you're actually interacting with that person who's creating that product. And I do wonder if it was, like you say, the manifesto, I think it's the internet, but I think also I wonder if it was lockdown, and I know we talk about these niche products on here, and rather than buying, and there's nothing wrong with buying a mainstream graphite rod,
No,
but
no.
also people want to look at something a little bit different that is personal to them. And it's part of that, it being personal, is that they're dealing with the person that's building the rod. Do you think there's a element of that and the lockdown that made people look at fishing slightly differently in the possible growth as well as a result?
Yeah, maybe because the lockdown was, everybody knows when we started with the lockdown, I thought, oh shit, what will happen? Is my business ruining? And the first 2 weeks, 2.5, 3 weeks, I had no mails, no reaction of people because everybody was sitting and waiting. Are we going to die or can we survive? I don't know. And then suddenly, it was massive. It was crazy at that time. And yeah, the other problem was I had some blanks on stock, but I'm ordering regularly. Every 6 weeks, I make orders by Mike. I had orders from Tom Morgan, and I had some orders from Japan, but everything was in the lockdown, and there were no flights. Everything was on the airports, and I could build rods, but I had no stock, and that was a problem. And then it came in, and then it was madness. It was totally madness that half year, and afterwards it became more normal. But I think that people were sitting at home, they watching it behind the laptop, and they were more looking into rods and fly fishing, and that helped our business. It was helping it, but the rest of the world it was terrible. But for our business, it was good. Yeah.
Yeah, it was a fascinating time. And I'm thinking how we came out of it the other side. And, I think people are still looking at things differently. And some of the content that I see on social media has taken a turn away from those, stereotypical sort of stuff that you see, which is really pleasing to be able to see. And I think the tackle came as a result of that as well. And did you find then for you it was a creative time that you could get into the workshop and work hard? And do you build, one of the questions I wanted to ask as well, are you building to order, or do you build a section of rods from your range, and then that might be useful if someone buys one? Or is each one, because I know the interaction I had with you was that you were keeping me in touch, but with that build, but how do you go about that process?
No, no, I never. I have some rods on stock because when you have fairs, you have them. You have to show them, but that's the only thing. And most of the time, are that also my demos. But because everybody has a personal touch or personal color, or so many inserts, so it's always not the perfect rod for them. So, and I want always to make the perfect rod, so I have nothing on stock. So when people take contact with me, I will then, now the discussion begins. What kind of blank do you want, because I have my own collection, but I have other high level brands, and then we try to find the best blank. And then the next step is, okay, what kind of insert do you like? And I show them pictures, and I send them pictures, and also about the hardware, and we can make a nice, and we discuss about it. So you can get what you like, but also with the Yamame feeling, because sometimes I get customers and they want a really colorful rod, and it's not my cup of tea. And there are other rod builders who can. It's their image, it's their lifestyle, it's their way how they make rods, and I try to keep them clean. And I say always, my rods are modern with a classic touch. I love agate and that kind of thing, so it has to be. Yeah, I like balancing in colors and in shapes, so not robust, not colorful. And yeah, so when somebody wants that kind of thing, I say several times, okay, it's not the best way. Go to another, please, because it's not my rod, it's not my style, and that's for me also important. But yeah, together you will get always. That's the most beautiful thing, to get what he likes and what I like, and then you get a nice rod, and then you can create every time also new materials, new colors, or something like that, color schemes. Yeah. So
Nice.
no stock.
Yeah. Well, that's a nice problem to have. And I get the sense as well, having looked at the bamboo community and some of the stuff that you've said, that it's a pretty friendly community. And that's kind of nice, isn't it? That you all interact with each other, you will help each other. And like you
Yeah,
say,
yeah.
if that rod color isn't necessarily for you, you can recommend someone else. Despite you being not competitive, but obviously, you want to sell a rod and they want to sell a rod, but I get the sense that it is a very friendly place to inhabit. Is that true?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Because you try also to help each other. As you know, for example, I'm now distributor of several high-level brands. In my opinion, the best brands in glass business. But I'm selling them also to the rod builders, and I can help them out. It's easier for them because when you're ordering one or two blanks from Japan, yeah, the VAT, the shipping cost, it's hell. And I can keep it all for myself, but I can also helping them. I'm selling them, and yeah, it's a nice community. Everybody tries to help each other. If you have, for example, no components, because also in the lockdown I need snake brand guides. Yeah, they were not available. Yeah, they were available in the US, but yeah, the shipment was locked on the airport, and you contact somebody else. Do we have some spare. Okay, no problem. And they ship 100 guides to me, so then I could work further. So that's it's a nice, easy community. It's not that they will kill each other. Yeah,
Nice. Nice.
yeah,
And I know you mentioned fairs there, and that's where I first met you. And I remember it well for the reason that it was really nice that you're on the stand, sort of, there was an aisleway between the two of us, but you came over and I was working on another rod stand and a graphite rod stand, and you came over and introduced yourself. We got chatting, you showed us the rods and everything else. And then I remember I had a couple of guys came onto our stand and said, well, do they have this in a shorter rod? That, this is what I'm thinking of. I said, no, but you need to come. And I brought them over to you. And I think one of them bought a rod from you as well at the time, which was really cool. And that's where it all started, the conversation. So I've watched from afar with great interest to see how the business, and it was, like I say, it was lovely to see you at the
yeah,
BFFI as part of the alternative tackle team as well.
yeah. But that's all. Yeah, I don't know to explain everything always in detail in it, but yeah, that's all about it. Because when people love the product, they will also enthusiasm to other people, and it's a kind of chemistry. And then they will come and not always straight away buying a rod, because the fairs where I am on the BFFI or in the EWF in Munich, people are coming and sometimes they are surprised about the rod. So, whoa, it's glass, okay, cool made. And then sometimes 9 months later or a year later they're coming back and then they say, okay, I seen you last year and it was nice, and now I want to buy a rod from you. And if it's not from me, maybe from another, but it's okay. But if people coming in the glass business, then that's okay.
Yeah.
And you notice that, for example, with alternative tackle, that's a really strange, funny group. It's some of we say sometimes you have to be crazy because it's fun, but it's also when you see on the BFFI, it was the most busiest part of the fair. Everybody was it was coming to look to all the rods of all the rod builders, and yeah, and it worked like chemistry. Yeah,
Yeah, that was great. And as you know, I spent a lot of my time there and ended up buying a reel as well that I used
yeah,
pretty
yeah.
much every day, that I'd spent 4 or so years lusting after, and it was just no good, and managed to get one of those. But that was great fun. And you have, like you say, a large number. I think you have 18 rods in the lineup at the moment. Are they all glass, or do you look at other materials as well?
I have two are not glass, is graphite, because sometimes in certain length you need graphite. Also, glass has a certain, it's not possible to get it longer. And there is an 8 foot 9, for example. What you have is one of the longest possibilities in glass. There is there is the border at 9 feet, and that's you have E glass and S glass, and that's S glass. And but yeah, it's all glass what I have mostly, 60 models. Yeah, and it's from the shortest is 5 foot 6, and the longest is 8 foot 9. And there's a lot of things in between, and some of them are similar. For example, my first blank what I developed was with Mike McFarland. It was a 7 foot 5 weight, or 7 foot 2, and from there I make that was the pure, and I made it now from 1-2 till a 6 liner. And then the black pearl, I have it from 3 weights till 6-7 weight, and then you have some other lines. And then I have many blanks only in one model, specifically made for that length in that weight. And sometimes it's hard to get what you want, and sometimes it goes in very easily. Last year I went to Mike for a week to learn every single detail, how you have to roll a blank, because I want to know every detail of how it's made, how do they design it, how do they develop it, because I'm not a technical guy. I only can tell him what I feel and how it has to feel, and he understands that. And when I was there for a week, I learned more and more about it, and we developed my last rod, and that's you. Then you see how much work it is to get a good blank, and it can sometimes take weeks or months. But when you have it, it gives you a lot of yeah. It's a good feeling when you manage it, and
Nice. And so, how does this sort of, for you, it is coming incredibly clear to me that, you're doing this professionally, you're doing it very, very well. How did that transition? Because it's a very dangerous road to go down, doesn't it? From is hobby rod builder an apt description to going to a professional full time one? Did that take a lot of thought? Was that a nervous moment? Did you think, I'm turning something that's a hobby into my life? You've alluded to already that you're loving where that's gone, but was that a decision that took some time to resolve and say, yes, this is the way that I'm going? Or did you suddenly think, actually, yes, I'm going to do this and we'll see what happens? Or was it a drawn out process to decide to go full time?
no, I was helped with some people and with some shitty. I was working with some people in a company, and yeah, I had yeah. It ended up in the hell with law and order and on court, and yeah, I win everything finally, but I was not allowed to work. But and then I had some time to make rods, and it gives me sort no headache. And suddenly after that, yeah, I had to find a new job. And then a friend of mine said, I think you love the rod building. I said, yes. He said, come work for me for 2 days a week. And the rest of the week you start to building rods. Is that an idea? I said, yeah, that's the way we do it. And so I was helped with some people, luckily, unluckily in some situation, but and then I could think about it, and I decided to become a rod builder. So it was sometimes some bit pushed, but also, yeah, how do you say that? I don't know exactly the good words for it, but I was helped to make that decision. And of course, if you not agree with that, you will not do it. But I love to do it, and yeah, that's the way it went.
And it makes me think a little bit about when I was traveling. I don't know if you do this yourself, but at the time, there's two things that I remember. And one of them was when you filled in occupation, if you were traveling on a immigration form, I would write fishing guide, which I thought in my mind was super, super cool. And the
Yeah,
other thing was that I remember when I was with my friend Duncan, actually, and we were going into Oregon, and I'd seen the Jackal film with Bruce Willis, and he walked in with a rod tube, and they said purpose of visit, and he just said steelhead, and I thought that was cool. So when I went into Oregon Airport, they asked me purpose of visit, and I said steelhead. I didn't say vacation. I just said steelhead, and they loved that. So that was cool. But is that kind of nice as well to say, when you meet people or whatever, you can say, I'm a rod builder. And that sparks in itself conversation with people who suddenly are really interested in what you do for a job, I guess.
yeah, yeah. Because everybody knows. A lot of people I know, they say, "What are you doing now?" I said, "You are always in the fashion business, yes, and now I'm a rod builder. I'm a professional fly rod builder." And then they think, "What?" And yeah, because they know those people exist, but more in the US and in the UK or something like that. And I think I'm in Holland the only professional, full-time professional rod builder. And even in Germany, I know a lot of them are part-time or doing it with a mixed. And yeah, for me it's full-time, and I'm proud of it. And also, you have straight away a lot to explain, not to explain, a lot to talk about, because people straight away say, okay, how are you doing it and what are you doing, and yeah, tell me about it. So yeah, you have always a good conversation straight away, and that's exactly what you say. Because when you say, "Well, what is your profession, rod builder?" Whoa, okay, and then you have time to explain. Yeah, And if you say you're a car driver or a bus driver, okay, that's nice. So this end of story. But it's not. I'm not meaning that the bus driver is not an interesting job, but there are a lot of it. And there are many bus drivers, and or when you're a butcher, it's okay, you're a butcher, but when you're a rod builder, whoa, yeah, that's because there are so less rod builders. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I know some friends of mine that we call people who don't fly fish civilians, and they don't know what's happening in the fly fishing world, and they like to poke in, be it from learning from TV programs and stuff like that. But this might be one that may grow a little bit more. That people who don't fly fish we call
Yeah.
civilians, basically. But I should mention as well that we talked about the rod, and Nico, as you know, I like to be very clear and open about these things. Nico hasn't asked to come on here. I invited him. He hasn't paid to be on here. And the rod that I have from him, I bought as well. And as he said, it was when I was choosing this, I didn't want something, as you said, more traditionally, glass rods will be similar sort of length as bamboo rods, and I didn't want a glass rod to clash with that in that sort of length. So I decided on the 8'9" 3-weight, the black pearl as you call it.
Yeah.
And as I said, it features on one of the podcasts, and I caught some beautiful fish on that. But I've been astounded by the versatility of it as well. How it will cast, like you say, the presentation, the playing of the fish is extraordinary, but also the real interesting thing for me, and I was astounded. I thought, I'm going to see how this. I was on the river, it was quiet, and I usually fish flatter water. I'm looking for rising fish. But if it's quiet, sometimes I might put a nymph and run it through some faster water. And I was thinking, well, I must start with a light nymph because it's not going to be able to cope. I think I got up to about 3.5 mil of tungsten on a 3-weight rod without a problem. This thing just threw it out without a problem. And it was a really, really, really cool rod to actually fish with. And I've really enjoyed doing that. And have you found that people have been astounded by how flexible they are? They're not just for casting a dry fly on a bright summer's day or a beautiful summer's day fishing.
Yeah, but that's the meaning of it, huh? Because that's the funny thing to develop that kind of rods. Because when you I only develop rods what I can do, what I fish with myself. Because, for example, a double handle or a rod I cannot design, or a salmon rod. It's not my cup of tea. But this kind of what you're saying is where I'm coming to fish, and I think, okay, that's the way I have to design a blank or a rod. And then I started with, and then it has to be, all those futures has to be in the rod, otherwise I will not bring it. But yeah, that's the way it has to be. I think if that's the question, the answer. But yeah, that's the way I think. I don't know yeah, it's sometimes it's hard to explain as what I have in my mind to say to people what has to be. That's all what rod can do, because sometimes you're surprised what rods can do. What you say, because some people think glass rods is only for dry fly, but you have to cast. You can easily cast pretty big nymph with it.
That was the thing that astounded me, I have to
Yeah,
say, that its ability to do that. And that's the thing, these are rods, a lot of these, and be it bamboo, be it glass, whatever it may be, that, they're not sort of rods you think, oh, well, it's a sort of, I'm going to cast a dry fly to rise. You can actually use them the whole time. And that's what I
yeah.
like, the versatility of them, which is deeply pleasing. So I like it very much from that point of view. Do you think a lot about fly lines and choice of fly line in a rod? Will you string a rod up with a variety of fly lines, or do you sort of have a particular one that you feel that does the job really well for the glass rods that you're building?
Yeah. All my blanks I develop with the 406 fly lines. The 406 fly lines are thinner lines compared to the lines for nowadays, because they are much more heavier than when you, for example, when you take. I have an old scientific angler, still a line of 25 years ago, a 4-weight. When I take the same line from the scientific anglers nowadays, those lines are much more heavier because the average rods are much more stiffer. They need more weight to get bent, and the 406 lines are especially for glass rod developed and split cane. So I'm using those. And another line what I still really love is the triangle taper, and from Cortland the silk. But all those lines are classic and thinner. So yeah, when you use those lines, you get, that's important. That is the back. That's a good combination. And of course, some people will say, I need another line or a scientific line. It's also possible, but now most of the time you have to go back in weight of the line, and this is all in balance. Yeah, that are my lines.
Yeah, and that's part of the fun of it, is figuring out that works with it. But that using those 406 lines, I guess, makes your job a whole lot easier, and you can recommend something for people, because as listeners will know, I always talk so much about fly lines. And if you're glass curious, understanding that can change things a little bit, and getting that line and rod combination is really, really important. Tell me something. Your company, Yamame, is named after that fish from those Japanese mountain streams. Do you plan to head there? Have you headed there? Have you caught a Yamame? Is that on your list of things that you'd
It's
love to do?
Yes, it's on my bucket list. And before Corona, we had some plans with the family, with my son and wife, to go to Japan. And this summer it will happen. And I'm going for some days fly fishing with Tomo, and we have to catch the Yamame. They say it's still pretty hard to catch, but he's delicate. He's spooky, but I need to catch him, and that will be, yeah. Then the circle is round, they say, yeah. But this year it will happen, and I love it.
That'll be quite. I guess that'll be quite an emotion. I'm an old sentimental fool, but I'd find that quite emotional if my company were named after such a special, elusive, difficult to catch fish, and then I caught one. That would be pretty cool, wouldn't it?
Oh yeah, oh yeah. I will dancing and I will drink about it for it afterwards. But yeah, but it has to be happen. But if you stay on that river, I think with your first cast in Japan on the water in the near, we will do it in the near Kyoto. So there's also a beautiful area, and it will, yeah, it's a kind of dream come true. But it's, yeah, and it's, yeah, I can tell you will not go often to Japan. It's to Spain, it's easier, and we backpacked in the early days many times. But yeah, Japan was still on our bucket list, and yeah, to be there for a second time or a third time, it will not. Yeah, will be not soon. I can tell you, because it's an expensive country, and it's yeah, it's, yeah. So it's a real dream come true.
That sounds a pretty cool one. And, people often, we have some of those popular places that people name, and rightly so, but it's nice to hear something a little bit different as well. What other plans do you have fishing wise for this year?
Yeah, I've planned 2 trips to Slovenia, because yeah, I love that country as well. They have really nice. The fish is nice. The nature is beautiful. The people are nice. The food is good. Also important. It's the whole package what is nice over there. So in 10th of June or the 11th of June, we're going there for 7 days fishing. I will do that, and also in September. And maybe there is something in between, but that's not planned. My wife didn't know yet. So it's off the record.
As I often say on here, nobody's listening, so
Yeah.
you're absolutely fine.
Yeah.
And so for Yamami, what are the plans looking ahead? Have you got plans? You're going to be doing shows, I guess. And what else do you have? Anything sort of planned, and you're just going to continue to put so much time and effort into the brand that you built up over the last few years?
Yeah, but for fairs, I will still do what I can do. 3, 4 fairs a year. It's the BFFI. It's in Belgium. It's a nice fair, and I'm doing in Germany. And in Germany, that is the biggest of Europe, and some people say it's even the most beautiful and the best one of the world. It's said by people from the US, not by me, but the location is perfect, and the way they put the fair is also good. So it's, for example, in many fairs you see Sims 6 times or other brands 6 times, and they say every brand has one selling point. So there is a big variety. So therefore, you had also place for people like me for more small, independent, and luxurious brands. So therefore, the variety is perfect over there. So therefore, I think it's one of the best fairs in the world. And the BFFI is it's a different fair, but it's countryside. It's nice. It's busy, and it's easy to going. Everybody is welcome. It's busy, and everybody's looking, and it's for me it's important. The BFFI. You see your customers, and
Yeah, and you were at the London one as well. My hope
yeah,
is that will reappear at some stage as well. If
yeah,
you're listening, Fergus.
yeah. He said twice we will be back. It's like Schwarzenegger, but someday they're gonna be back. But that was amazing show as well, because it was not huge, but the level was high, and the location, everything was perfect. And and everybody said, please put it back, but it's still the rumor. And sometimes he has to push on the button, but it has to do also with the location, I suppose. But we will see. But if it's coming back, I will be there for sure. And I think Alternative Tackle, the whole group will come back again straight away, I think. Yeah. But
Yeah,
it's,
yeah.
we will see.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, it's been great as always to catch up with you. I wish you every continued success that you're enjoying at the moment, and I always try and shout out about good people in this industry. You are certainly one of those, and as I said, I hope everything continues as it's continuing. If people want to get in touch with you, if they want to talk with you, how is the best way for them to contact you, and the ordering process and everything else? How does that work?
Yeah, they can contact me via Facebook, via my website, via Instagram, or call straight away by phone. I'm always willing to explain to how it works, or that's easy. Yeah, that's the most easiest way to contact me. So there are no more possibilities. I think email, website, Instagram, Facebook. Yeah.
Fantastic. And I'm assuming the handle is Yamame.
Sorry.
Your the name on there will be
Oh yeah,
Yamame.
Yamame Fly Rods.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
Thanks.
Well, you're welcome. No problems at all. Well, as I said, I want to shout about people like yourself, and it would be really cool if they can at least have a look and see what you're about. And as I said, it's fun to fish in different and interesting ways. And like I say, I think people like myself and many others are searching out niche, not niche players in the sense of, but what you're actually doing with your products, and artisans, as I've used that term before, who are doing interesting stuff in the industry, and you're owning something that's been put together by your hands. And I really like the sound of that. So I wish you every continued success, Nico, with that. It's been wonderful to have you on the podcast today. Thank you so much for being a guest.
Okay, thank you so much as well. Okay.
Everyone, this has been the Fly Culture Podcast. Thank you so much for listening to this one. I hope you've enjoyed this one. You've got a glance inside the world of glass. Nico, like I say, is a great guy, and go take a look at his website should you want to. But as ever, there will be plenty more editions of the Fly Culture podcast coming very, very soon.
The Fly Culture podcast is brought to you in association with Fly Culture, a quarterly print magazine. For more information, please visit flyculturemag.com. You can also find Fly Culture on Instagram, Facebook and Twitter.